Well, welcome to today's rant. I trust you can see me. As you can see, I am still at the beach. I want to show you a couple of interesting things while we're waiting for a few other people to log in. I'm going to turn the camera around. And you see that big white cloud there? It's a thunderstorm coming this way. I'm going to pan. I'm panning to the north here. And you see that big white cloud? That's a thunderstorm. That's a thunderstorm. I can hear thunder all around me. And you look this way, there's the ocean. It's my neighbor's house. And but you know, when you see those pretty white cumulus clouds, they are beautiful. They're even more beautiful from the air when you're flying, as long as you don't fly in them, because they will tear you to pieces. Just kind of giving you a little pan of our beach place here. This is my seat where I do my study, and here are my two dogs. Some of you asked to see them occasionally. That's Harley, the closest to me, and that's Harley's mother, Lucy, the smaller poodle. She's a standard poodle, but a smaller one. And Harley's a golden doodle. And that's their ball that they're wanting me to throw down here. But anyway, just wanted to show you that. Been a beautiful day down here. I've had workers down here painting our house and fixing all the little issues that come up after a while. And here's another picture of the ocean, and this is a lot next door to us. If you can see that house out in the middle on a little island, a pink house, that's a curiosity. You might say an oddity. Here's a longer view of our back porch. This is probably the Holy of Holies. This is where we gather every night for fellowship and hanging out, watching the stars. 4th of July, we have the best fireworks show I've ever seen. We've got Camp Lejeune right across from us. They do a spectacular fireworks show that's pretty close to us, and sitting down, but right down to the right, I'll show you again. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a red roof building that's a big U-shaped villa where a lot of the movie stars stay when they come down here to do their, movies and all, which we have quite a few shot right around here. If you ever saw the movie The Notebook, it was shot right across the street and down a little bit. I think a Richard Gere movie. Got some stories to tell about that, but a bunch of them been shot down here. Usually every summer there's some being shot, but they quit because North Carolina did away with its tax incentives for movies, and Wilmington had grown up to becoming like just behind Hollywood in movie production, and now they said there's only one movie going to be produced here this year. Now I'm sure you really were interested in all that. But anyway, it's a great place. It's our getaway and my personal getaway for a lot. And I've been down here having a great time with the Lord, seeking the Lord, and getting more and more for The Path Part 2, which I'm trying to finish this summer. But, I just wanted to bring up one interesting thing that caught my attention. You've heard of the word Draconian, usually related to law, where people are a real controlling, legalistic person, or law or government can be called Draconian. And not many people seem to understand where that came from. It was from a guy called Draco. who was, you know, a member of the legal system in ancient Athens, and they were very devoted to law, to legal procedure, but they didn't have their law codified. It was all done by memory. And, you know, a lot of the procedure was trying to persuade, you know, the judge, or if they used juries, you know, what the law really was, when no one had ever written them down, had never written down the laws. Now, I don't know if that's better than having laws that are thousands of pages long, but I don't know which is worse. They're both draconian. But anyway, they hired this guy Draco to codify their law, to write them down. And he was so severe, he believed in capital punishment for everything, virtually everything. He literally believed in capital punishment for stealing a head of lettuce or a head of cabbage. Literally. Any stealing, you die. And now that's pretty severe. It's like getting, you know, capital punishment for a parking violation. And, no, stealing's a little worse, I understand. But anyway, Draco, as severe as he was, the people of Athens loved him. And it was their love for him that killed him. And one of the most remarkable deaths of a famous person in history was Draco. And he came into their big theater, and it was their custom, if you really loved or wanted to honor someone, you would take off your coat and throw it over them. Well, when he came into the theater, so many people took off their coats and threw them over him that they buried him and he suffocated under their coats. Isn't that incredible? Now I know you really, really wanted to learn that today. But to me, it's a curious thing how they so loved someone who was so legalistic and so severe. And it seems like it was because the tyranny of not having the law codified was worse than the draconian laws. Anarchy, lawlessness can be worse than legalism. And, I mean, it's a terrible thing to live under tyranny. I think it could be a worse tyranny to live under lawlessness. But both are extremes. We don't want to live under either one. There's a path of life between those extremes. But to me, it's a curious thing how, if anyone has ever lived under, you know, the tyranny of lawlessness, which our founding fathers called the tyranny of the mob, they saw the results of the French Revolution, where they actually came out against any law, any authority, anybody, and they just killed everybody. And it was so terrible. Somebody could accuse you, a maid or one of your workers could accuse you of something you were totally not guilty of, and you lose your head that day over it. There was no due process, no legal process. And I, for one, am very thankful for our legal system. It's far from perfect. I think it's degenerating right now. There's some things undermining it and that are stripping it of its true authority and its true power, and the worst thing of all, of true justice under our system, and those need to be addressed. But you know, there's a ditch on either side of the path of life. And if you fall into a ditch on one side, you know, I think the two ditches are legalism and lawlessness. If you fall into a ditch on one side, there's almost an inevitable reaction that would cause us to fall into the ditch, to overreact and fall into the ditch on the other side. If we were brought up under lawlessness, we will overreact and become very legalistic. If we came up under legalism, a control spirit, that type of thing, we will tend to overreact and go to lawlessness. This is what's happening in our country right now. It's what's tearing apart our country, and it's doing it because it's torn apart the church. I mean, you have the most extreme doctrines being taught in the church now. You have hyper grace, which is an extreme and, I think, poison that has, I think destroying and depriving the body of Christ of true grace by taking it to an extreme. And almost every truth does get taken to an extreme. But then you have those who are reacting to the hyper grace movement to the point where they do not even allow. This is happening in churches right now around the world, not just in America, where there are churches who you do not use the word grace at all. Listen, we only are here by the grace of God. That is something I never want to compromise. So there's a tension between the extremes. And usually, if you're walking the path of life, you're going to have people on both extremes mad at you. Not liking you, accusing you, condemning you, everything else. So one of the hardest things of all in this world is to walk the path of life. It's also the easiest path. It is at the same time the most difficult life we could ever live. It is also the easiest life we could ever live. Because the Lord is with us if we will walk on his path of life, the path of true grace, of the true grace of God. And so that's what we want to do. And if you're prone to react to the way people think of you, I think you're going to be constantly going from ditch to ditch. That's why Paul said if he were still seeking to please men, he would not be a bondservant of Christ. We cannot be his bondservant and please men. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up. Interesting little fact about Draco and Draconian law and behavior. Thank you for joining me for today's rant.